Welcome back, everyone. Let's commence the next session on the topic how significant is the fintech's role in the future of capital markets? Ladies and gentlemen, welcoming the moderator for the panel, Mr. Srinivas Jain, Executive Director, Chief of Strategy, Digital and Technology, SBI Mutual Fund. And now to our esteemed panelists, we have Mr. G. Mahalingam, whole-time member, Securities and Exchange Board of India. Next, we have Mr. Ashish Chauhan, Managing Director and CEO, BSC India. Our next panelist is Mr. Nitin Kamal, Founder and CEO, Zerodha. Welcome, one and all. Over to you, Mr. Srinivas Jain.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending on where you are all hearing this from. I'm very privileged to have a very distinguished panel of speakers in this session. It's usually very rare to have participations like this. We have one of the most senior most regulator in Mr. Mahalingam, who's a from SEBI. We have Ashish G who's the CEO of the Stock Exchange, one of the oldest stock exchange in Asia, and of course Nitin Kamath, who's founder and CEO of Zerodha, a disruptive fintech company in the capital markets, and also one of the India's largest tech brokerages in India. So, welcome all my panelists to this panel discussion. Our topic today is how significant is the fintech's role in the future of capital markets. One of the most interesting topic most people are looking forward to. The way we want to go about this is we plan to about 3 to 4 rounds of questions to all the panelists, and I'm sure there'll be lots of interesting questions to be asked. So we will take a couple of them at the end. So please post your questions in the chat window. Before we go into the round one, I know these are the difficult times during COVID period. So I would like to start with what's happening in the fintech industry with the regulation, with the exchanges. The first question to Mr. Mahalingam, sir. Sir, SEBI has taken multiple initiatives to ensure business continuity for the capital markets during and now post-COVID lockdown. Can you please highlight some of these key initiatives that SEBI has taken, sir?
Thanks, Srinivas, for this opportunity for me to interact with a lot of people in this seminar. Clearly, I think the COVID situation is unprecedented. I think none of us anticipated it. I think a lot of steps have been taken by the regulators across the world, including SEBI in India. First thing that we did along with the government was to declare the capital market services as essential, which was a very, very important step. In fact, the market crashed in the month of March, almost last week, and there was a clamor across the country that we should actually close the market, ban the short sales, tweak the short sales. I think the clamor was really becoming very, very cacophonous. But then we really didn't want to do that for the reason that I think market is a very essential function that has been declared by the government of India. So with the robust risk management and risk control systems that we have across the entire capital market machinery, we allowed the market to run with a little bit of tweaking here and there, even as far as the short sales are concerned. So this is one very important step that we took. Second, when it comes to the listed companies, we knew that quite a lot of compliance burden will be there on the listed companies. So the filings for the listed companies, mutual funds, REITs, InvITs, and all that, we actually gave sufficient amount of time. We extended the time period. A third important thing that we have done is as far as the fundraising is concerned. We know that many of these companies will go through fund crunches. So we made the rights issue a little more easier. We made the preferential offer pricing a little more easier. And the companies were even given more time to publish their quarterly results. Now, these were things which took place on the market side. And while we did this, I think quite a lot of things have also happened on the digital side. Just to quickly go through on the digital side, of course, prior to COVID, we had the benefit of demonetization. I'm using the word benefit from the angle that it's a fintech benefit. I mean, November 16, the whole country was taken aback by demonetization. But then I think what really paved the way for digitization to take deep roots in the country was demonetization. So clearly, the pace of digitization we observed in a very perceptible way in terms of consumer behavior, business processes, and also regulation, even from then onwards. And there are many, many physical requirements of regulatory compliances which are now being allowed in electronic mode. People want to, now in the present stage, right now, as far as COVID is concerned, people want to use, minimize the use of even physical currency. And they are quite interested in observing the norms of social distancing very, very scrupulously. So here, when it comes to customer interactions for KYC, approvals, disbursements, quite a lot of things have been moved into the electronic mode. I would only say perhaps the pandemic has that way, while it has been a kind of a big problem for humanity as a whole, for actually propping up fintech, I think it has been a great amount of turning point as far as the overall business world is concerned, financial world is concerned, and regulators are concerned. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. SEBI has been commended for all the work by all the market participants actually. Ashish ji, can you take us through some of the insights on the state of the capital market infrastructure today and how you have been adapting to the new COVID challenges?
Basically, Indian stock markets automated sometimes in early 90s. We were the pioneers as a country in screen-based trading. Before that, before we came in with the screen-based trading, almost every country in the world was doing floor-based trading, and one country had a mix, some floor and some phone-based trading, like Nasdaq used to be phone-based trading. So we were pretty much the first large market in the world, which became automated in 94. And then, of course, later on, and it was connected through the satellite telecom across India. Everyone was on equal footing, which was a very impressive achievement those days. And this is like 26 years back. Many of you might not have been born then, but India sort of went far ahead, and then later on, other people actually, US, UK, Japan, all of them became automated later on. After that, we also started doing real-time margining systems. We also had depositories, which were dematerialized, completely dematerialized. And that basically created an infrastructure which is world-beating today. There is no there is no special, there is no country which is better than us in terms of the trading, clearing, settlement systems. But in recent times, BSE also took it one notch higher. And today, the trading system of BSE gives you a response time of 6 microseconds on a median basis. And in 1 second, there are a million microseconds. So we give you a response at 160,000th of a second. Our sister exchange in Gandhinagar GIFT City called India INX gives you a response time of 4 microseconds. So effectively, we have basically moved towards giving you nanosecond response time. And the scale, again, is kind of not thinkable by most people. We can keep the same response time of 6 microseconds at 500,000 orders a second, because large number of orders are now being inputted by the computers, algorithm trading and high frequency traders. We have to upgrade our sort of scale in such a way that we can take literally millions of transactions in a minute. And those are the kind of things which India has. But today, we have a lot of mobile trading, a lot of HFT, a lot of algorithm trading. We have literally 300,000 plus terminals across India, and probably 1 million people providing services on trading, clearing, settlement, risk management, company sort of raising of funds, and also giving the compliances on real time. And so Indian markets are pretty much real time. If there is something called real time, there is no better market in the world in terms of information. Most of this information is available to public free of cost. There is no other country which gives this information free of cost. Even the tick by tick data with full book is given free of cost as per the SEBI regulations to everyone. And those are the kind of things which SEBI has imposed, and SEBI has ensured that the smallest of investor to the largest of investors are on the same keel, same even keel, so that there is no but getting better advantage using faster information and so on and so forth. So we are today what I call the state of the art, if there is any state of the art in the stock market world. And in terms of the services, the quality of services, we are pretty much the best. And we don't not only trade stocks, we trade stock derivatives, we trade currency derivatives, interest rate derivatives, commodities on the same platform. So you don't have to go from one place to another or one regulator to another. Everything is done that way. Risk management is real time on portfolio basis. I mean, these are some of the people who are not aware of the stock markets and the derivatives markets. These are all very complex situations, but we are able to arrange all this in real time. And our brokers like Zerodha, who actually probably don't have any branch to service customers, they do all stuff only on the mobile and internet and things like that. They've also kind of taken the game even higher by ensuring that the equity cult spreads across the entire country. Of course, the foreigners who want to trade in India, they have to still go through their own regulations of the global custodian, the local custodian, and so on and so forth. Today, in many of my BSE's own markets like mutual fund distribution and all, we are able to do T plus 30 minutes settlements. T plus 30 minutes, not T plus 2. T plus 2 is done in equities. But if you tell the foreigners that let's do T plus 1 settlement, they will find it very difficult because they have to go from global custodian, local custodian, all sorts of contract note across countries, movement of funds. India, with RBI, SEBI, and the entire framework of NPCI, RTGS and all, is cutting edge. There is no cutting edge other than what I mean. And I have seen China, I have seen US. Last year, I also spoke at UN on how India has improved its, even the payment processing framework, which is unique in the world with NPCI, RTGS and other things. And so somewhere in the line, although we don't generate that kind of revenues because we don't have that kind of per capita income, but in terms of usage of technology, we are like top of the line.
That's fantastic to hear, Ashish. In fact, kudos to you, your exchange, and all the market participants to keep everything alive even during these difficult times. That's a fantastic achievement for the Indian capital markets, actually, because despite all the disruptions, things have gone ahead. Nitin, over to you. Your organization also went through all this COVID, but it's very surprising to see, and I've heard about this, you have seen 100% growth month on month, especially during the lockdown. What do you attribute this growth to, Nitin?
No, I mean, see, firstly, we need to thank SEBI and the exchanges to make sure that we are open all the time. I think there are multiple enablers for this, right? Right from just the onboarding, which is completely digital today, right? We've been in broking business for like 10 years. The first 6 years, 7 years of our business, the most time was spent onboarding a customer, right? Getting these papers signed, KYC, etc. Today, onboarding is instant, right? So if you have an interest to invest, you're maybe 15 minutes away from opening an account, right? So yeah, so I keep asking this question to some of my friends, saying, would Ola or Uber have happened if before sitting in Ola Uber you had to do a KYC for whatever, right? So I think the first most important thing is this whole onboarding. Second, I think what this whole work from home thing enabled people to think about their personal finances, right? I mean, I know my friends from 20 years, and I've been in the markets in some form for 20 years, who kept saying for 20 years that they want to open an account, they want to start investing. And most of these people actually opened their accounts in March and April, and the reason they opened the account was because they sat in the house and they're suddenly like, oh, what I remember, there's this friend of mine who, runs a broking firm, maybe I should open. And this is across the board, and the good thing is most of these people who came in, they've invested and they're also seeing some money. The markets have gone. So I think what that has done is, because markets have done well in the last 2-3 months, they've, in turn, invited their friends to come join. So that has happened.
Is it also because there is no alternatives today? Because
absolutely,
I think the place to make money has come down. Is that also true?
Absolutely. I don't think there's any other option. It doesn't, your fixed deposit rates are so low. I mean, there's no point keeping money in the bank, if you were to factor in inflation. So yeah, so I think people are also seeking, higher yielding products. And so yeah, so I think these are 3 or 4 enablers that has gotten a lot of new investors in the markets.
Can you share some numbers? How big is this growth in the last few months?
So we've added 1 million customers in the last 5 months. We're at 2 million customers till Feb, Jan Feb. So we've added 1 million more this year. Now, in the Indian context, when I speak to my friends from the startup ecosystem, 1 million doesn't seem too much for them, because everyone talks of tens of millions of customers. But I think for capital markets, 1 million is a big deal, right? Because I think our potential audience, the potential audience in India that can invest in the stock markets are maybe 40 to 50 million. 4 to 5 crore Indians can potentially invest. So if if we alone were able to add 1 million, it's a decent headway to have made into that audience.
I'll come back to that potential maybe in the next round, Nitin. But it's amazing to see the kind of growth the organization, especially the capital market, has seen. Now maybe let's look at the round two. And round two, I'm more interested in understanding what kind of regulatory support, innovation that are happening in the fintech industry. Malikum sir, first question I want to ask is that SEBI has come out with this regulatory sandbox. Can you explain the intent of the sandbox and how it will benefit the fintechs?
Thank you, Srinivas, for that question. Actually, that's one of the major initiatives that has been taken by SEBI very recently. In fact, the other regulator, RBI, had also taken that initiative about a couple of months before SEBI. Clearly, the intent behind this kind of a sandbox is to ensure that, number one, we bring in a lot of innovations into the market. The small fintech firms with innovative minds, they get to play a constructive role in the market to make the efficiency, to take the efficiency levels higher, to reduce the cost, and to ensure that overall there is a systemic improvement for the consumers, the market consumers. That's how it is actually. Now, basically when you get into this, I think you have two types of sandboxes that SEBI was talking about. One is the innovation sandbox and the other is a regulatory sandbox. Both are clearly serving similar purposes. The innovation sandbox is more from the perspective that circular was issued in May of 2019. The idea there was to encourage the small fintech firms to come up with some, innovations which would be very useful. And what the entities would be doing, the entities which are running the innovation sandbox would be providing them the market-related data, particularly the trading data, the holdings data. These are two critical points of data. You can also get some order logs and trade logs and that kind of information. And these data could be used in a kind of a live environment for those fintechs to see how successful their innovations are. Now, these are entities which are not regulated by SEBI. I'm making a very clear distinction. Whereas the regulatory sandbox is meant for the regulated entities, this particular innovation sandbox is meant for non-regulated entities, which means even the small fintech firms, including individuals. I'm stressing it, including individuals, they can come and then they can actually do an offline testing of their proposed solutions. The data will be made available to these people by the stock exchanges, depositories, qualified RTAs, and as I told you, all this data will span across several important things, and these data points are historical. Obviously, they will not be current, and they are anonymized, so obviously the names will not be revealed at all, and they will be bound by certain comprehensive confidentiality agreements. Now, these are the basic starting points with which the innovation sandboxes are going to work, and these data sets will be shared through APIs, the application program interfaces actually. Now, these innovation sandboxes can be set up as a kind of a non-profit entity by the respective entities here. But these innovation sandboxes, nevertheless, I need to emphasize here, they have to comply with KYC norms. There will be no relaxation in investor protection norms and data integrity laws. These are something on which we are not going to compromise at all. Now, these will also ensure, as I said right at the beginning, these are meant for the improvement of the capital market. If by any chance these are going to be for any kind of manipulative purposes or fraudulent purposes, they are not going to be allowed at all. There are elaborate administrative procedures which have been set in place to ensure that the people who have the eligibility, they will be allowed to come in to this area to actually practice these sandboxes. Now, from the innovators angle, clearly this is going to reduce the time by which the entire authorization is given for this thing, for this particular sandbox, and he will be able to work on the real data which is made available to him, although it is going to be in an anonymized form. Such kind of sandboxes, I am very sure, over a period of time, will improve the access to capital of several entities, and the cost will come down in a very big way. And if you look at the consumer angle, the consumer is going to be the immense beneficiary of these kinds of sandboxes. Number one, he is going to have safer products, newer products. It is going to increase access to several products to him, and the protection available to him is also going to be higher. It also reduces the risk for the consumer. There are other things that I don't want to talk about here, but this is the broad framework of the sandboxes that SEBI is contemplating. And this is a kind of broad sandbox, the framework, which many of the other regulators across the world are also practicing. In fact, SEBI's work, I would say, is definitely not original. It has actually captured the good points from several other jurisdictions, and it has also taken into account what RBI has come up with. Thank you.
Thank you, Manikam sir. I think it's pretty encouraging that SEBI has been moving in the direction. I think after your talk today, I'm sure more fintechs would be looking at the document around sandbox and see how they can get access to this particular sandbox. I know it's early days, but I'm sure more and more fintechs will use both the regulatory sandbox and the innovation sandbox. Ashish ji, back to you. I want to understand. Can you talk about what are the initiatives the industry that's have taken, especially when it comes to making life easier for things like onboarding, other technology initiatives for fintechs? What are the initiatives that both exchange and the industry has taken in the recent past?
I think there are several initiatives. One of them, I think Nitin mentioned about eKYC. When you have to have physical visits because know your client is a very important issue in the financial markets. You have basically the PMLA and other acts to follow, unlike say buying for a refrigerator or a mobile phone. That's a different world altogether. Whereas here, the customer who is putting in money, you need to know exactly what he or she is, where their income is coming from, and other things. So the KYC required a lot of physicality in terms of visiting people, getting them to sign at probably 50, 60 places in different documents and things like that. In a way, the industry has been asking for eKYC because we are literally the role model for the rest of the world to follow in terms of automation, how that we are still being on the physical side of the onboarding of the customers. And that, I think, recently SEBI and Ministry of Finance, after the last budget, in fact, Madam Finance Minister also took it personally, in terms of following up all the regulations and got it done. So thanks to even the Finance Minister, who has actually ensured that all the rules, regulations of the eKYC come in play using Aadhaar and so on and so forth. So for me, that is, I think, a long-term large play that is coming, and that would come in all the products of the capital markets. The other part is that in some ways the brokers have started working from home, because earlier we had many regulations which basically wanted to record every order that was coming, especially on phone, and all the requirements were there. That's why they had to be in a confined room with a lot of technologies. Now SEBI has allowed them to, the brokers and dealers, to work out of their home so that they are able to service their customers with slightly less regulatory discomfort. But effectively, that has worked out well. The third part, which is very important from our side and also from every broker, is the information security. Because when you are working from a office, it has been designed for most brokers, almost everyone, for information security. While as when you work from home, you don't even know how many people are sort of using the same computer, and then you are going to do so many billions of dollars of transactions using that same computer. It can really have difficult sort of problems coming up for the person concerned. And that's where I think every broker over last few months have strengthened their information security framework. BSE has also started providing information security related consultancy and also solutions as approved by SEBI to ensure that our brokers are fully compliant with the SEBI regulations. Fortunately, SEBI had come out with these regulations on information security almost 6 months back, and they had made it mandatory. So slowly, everyone is realizing. Of course, exchanges and other infrastructure institutions also had to improve their own information security infrastructure coming from people's homes, because nobody, as Mr. Mahalingam pointed out, nobody had visualized the situation before. We were in a way prepared, and so when on March 23rd, the lockdown was ensured, the next day, the entire market worked. Trading, clearing, settlement, all banks, all the coordination across the country worked like clockwork. But there were preparations for over 15, 20 years that have gone in, but nobody had visualized working from home for everyone, pretty much. I mean, we have literally now 10% or less people of BSE working out of BSE's offices. And that also 2 different offices in the same city. So literally, that's a large building and very few people sitting there. And similarly, another large building has very few people sitting, which used to be our BCP site. And so we have like 2 sets of people working as if they are working from the same office, but people working from home. Literally more than 1,000, 1,500 people every day logging in through secure tunnels, doing things. And so those are the kind of things which we have learned. But SEBI, in a way, as Mr. Mahalingam pointed out, made us what we call essential service early on in the week before March 23rd. And so that gave us a hint that there is something larger coming. And so many of us were ready. Probably our members were not that ready, because it's not easy to buy up all these things and strengthen your things. But over last few months, I think everyone has kind of come up, and new products have come in. SEBI has allowed options in goods, physical deliveries of goods. Earlier, options used to expire on futures, which was becoming cumbersome because of the STT and CTT kind of applications. And now, gold, silver, all pretty much every commodity is now being allowed on options for physical goods delivery. And so SEBI is allowing many, many new initiatives currently in terms of some relaxation, but also ensuring that the entire market momentum doesn't stop. So just to give you a perspective, from April 1 till now, till yesterday, we raised 4.05 lakh crore in terms of the number of billions. It's, I think, around close to $55 billion of funds using and commercial papers, bonds, privately placed, publicly placed. Even the largest IPO or rights issue ever in India of Reliance Jio was also conducted without a hitch. And so those are the kind of things we don't talk about in terms of numbers, that literally the fundraising has been very similar to previous period where there was no COVID. And so that you can imagine how the entire market has taken to the new situation in a more sort of easier way, or sort of everyone from investors to merchant bankers to stockbrokers, all of them have kind of evolved very quickly to kind of achieve this.
Yeah, I think kudos to you and the whole industry, Ashish ji. I think the industry has done an amazing job of digitizing very, very quickly. And this is kind of helped in business continuity also. Back to you, Nitin. There was a recent report which said that there are only about 4 crore or 40 million DMAT customers in India, and less than 1 million of them are actually active. And that actually tells you the scope of the investment opportunity in the capital markets today. What do you think would be the role of fintechs, companies like you, to expanding the scope and getting more and more people the opportunities to create wealth in the capital markets?
Yeah, I mean, just to correct you, that's not a million. I think there are crore demat accounts. I think there are 1 crore Indians who actively participate in the markets.
Yeah, sorry, that was a crore. 4 crore and 1 crore. That's right. Yeah, that's true.
No, I mean, I think, see, the opportunity here is to kind of cater to first timers, people who haven't invested. So I think the focus has to be in terms of educating and advisory. Right? I don't think this country needs another trading platform like ours, which enables just buy sell. I mean, I think there are more than enough out there. One of those things that we are very passionate about, and we are trying to see if we can somehow spawn that off, is to build like an advisory ecosystem. Right? Because if you look at what has helped in the US, right, to become whatever the financial superpower it has become, is this is a very vibrant advisory ecosystem. And what professional advisors do is that they turn their customers professional. I think one of the problems in this country today is that we are not taught finance through school and college. Right? We end up getting a first job, and we learn about investing, etc., from friends, family, or we end up picking what our parents did. Right? As in, most of my friends, ended up buying real estate because that's what they thought they should do, because that's what their parents did, right? So now it's very tough to expect that our education system is going to change, right? But I think what we can do is, I think the onus is on people like us is to somehow help spawn off advisory ecosystem, right? And now thinking about advisory ecosystem is thanks to SEBI now we have this RIA framework, right, using which you can advise and also advise in such a way that there's no conflict of interest, right? Because historically the other problem in this country has been that people who were advising were also earning commission from the manufacturer, right? So there was this, was the advice right or wrong? I mean, it was always questionable. Now, thanks to this push towards RIA and push towards saying advisors should not have any conflict. His interest should be aligned with the customer. I think the opportunity today is to actually create an advisory ecosystem in India, and it has to be tech first, because because the other problem in the country is also that people don't like to pay for advice. Right? So I mean, if people don't like to pay for advice, how do you build a business at scale? So it has to be delivered through tech. But one of the realizations that I think I've had personally after we've invested in a bunch of startups who have done this is that I don't think India intellectually is there to consume advice over app, right? They still want to talk to a human, right? Because when it comes to money, I don't think they take those long-term decisions just by looking at a push notification or an email saying this is your portfolio. So they need some kind of physical kind of comfort. So I think the biggest opportunity in India today is to build an advisory ecosystem which is tech enabled, but it's still physical. It's still humans are fronting the tech. You could have human reading of something which a program is generated, but he's the one who is advising. And there the opportunity is immensely huge. I mean, I think India has potentially 4 crore Indians who aren't investing in the markets who can potentially invest. Right, and the good thing about building an advisory ecosystem, like I said, right, is that we can turn this entire country very professional in terms of the finances. Right, today, like one of those things, we had done this quiz with our customers. We had asked them, do you know what a penny stock is, right? And it was crazy that no one really knew. So what we did was now when someone's buying a penny stock on our platform, we actually slow him down. We say, do you know this is penny stock? You can lose a lot of money in this. Right. So, but the thing is, the problem is people are buying penny stock without knowing that it's a penny stock. Right. So you need that advisor to come educate him, train him. While we try to do this as brokers as well. I mean, yeah. So I'm extremely passionate about it, and I hope people listening to this.
And content will play a very important role in this, simplifying the content, giving education about. That's something very important. I know you do a lot of work on on lots of content that you put out there, and I'm sure I see a lot of people do that.
Correct. Yeah. No, I think content, so we run an initiative called Varsity, which is I think after Investopedia the largest in the world right now in terms of activity on capital markets. It's very engaging. We were just checking. So we run a certification online, free of cost certification, and so I think we had almost 70,000-80,000 people take those certifications in the last 3-4 months. And again, I think with the content, I think in today's world, people don't have There's so much distraction around us thanks to our mobile, right? So people don't have the attention span to sit through blocks of text, right? So content again has to be, I think, reimagined for today's world. Short content, very engaging, by gamifying the content. So I think there's opportunity both on education and on advisory side.
Yeah, thank you, Nitin. I know we've been running a little short on time here. We've 5 more minutes, but I have a last round of questions before we take one question from one or two maybe from the audience. Mr. Malingam, we know that SEBI has been doing a lot of data analytics. Can you take us through some highlights on what has this been used for, whether it's monitoring or market development? Does SEBI use AI ML for this purpose?
Yeah, thank you, Srinivas. Actually, SEBI is stepping into this in a very gradual way. I wouldn't say that they have done a great thing so far, but I think they are stepping in pretty sure and they are pretty firm-footed there. Clearly, I think this is one thing which is going to be immensely useful in the area of surveillance and subtech, actually. So surveillance is something where we study the price trends of the scripts, where we look at the trading patterns which are emerging of individual accounts and all that. We have a very good sophisticated surveillance system. Of course, in this case, we work along with the exchanges, and exchanges provide us the first level information and data, which we again counter check at our level. Now, this is a good part analysis of the big data. Now, right turn, we are studying the patterns and all that, but I think the big data analysis would involve a huge amount of intelligent reading of the data and drawing the right or near right conclusion. That's what now we are going towards as far as the surveillance is concerned. The other thing is, of course, the compliance with the regulations and monitoring there. Here it is going to be useful even for the market participants to comply with the regulation. They can use this kind of a technology to ensure that as and when the transactions are done, they automatically get into a compliance mode. There is no need for a separate compliance mechanism at all. So this will be a straight-through compliance process, which is going to be tremendously useful. One last thing that I would like to close with is that we have now appointed a committee on financial and regulatory technology. There is a high-level committee which advises SEBI on several areas where actually SEBI can take some steps to imbibe the technology, use the technology even within its own premises as well as in the capital market in a broader world, actually. I didn't get into the details of it for the sake of time, actually. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. That's been actually very useful, and I'm sure people are looking forward for this new committee recommendation also. Ashish ji, maybe very quickly, I know RegTech is a big thing, and you guys are doing at Exchange a lot of risk management and compliance-related issues. How do you deal with all this, and what are the new initiatives the exchanges are taking when it comes to risk management?
See, the modern fintech, in my opinion, is actually also combined with RegTech. You can't run any fintech without having regulatory situations embedded in it, the validations. If you don't sort of embed there, the millions of transactions which Zerodha does, probably they might not be able to even handle manually. So effectively, most of the things we do at exchange level or our brokers do has embedded regulatory structures within. But on top of that, we also have many things which the brokers don't have. That is, if one single customer is working out of two different brokerage houses and trying to manipulate a price of a particular stock, we analyze all these things on real time using AI, ML, and big data to give information to both the sides of the brokers on real time, saying there is something wrong here, please check this out. In case somebody is trying to, which is what we call self-trade on PAN number basis. So the same PAN number is trying to do. But if there is a way in which there is a pattern which is coming saying a group of people are trying to do that, we also inform the brokers on real time. We have a separate RegTech module sitting of BSE with each broker. We are the only exchange in the world which provides a RegTech module which is centrally available in addition to their own things. And there are many sort of interesting features which we provide to them so that they later on, they don't get taken to task by the exchange or the regulator. And we will continue to evolve this because this is not something which is sort of momentary. Every time people figure out newer way. In fact, there are sort of softwares which BSE has where if you 3 people or 5 people jointly figure out sort of a round robin, one after another. And so at the end, the price of the stock gets manipulated or the derivatives, but there is no open position left amongst themselves. Even that is called circular trading. BSE recognizes this, identifies it on real time using AI/ML, and actually cancels those trade real time. Again, BSE is the only actually in the world which does this real time for all its sort of all its derivatives and other things. So somewhere on the line, all these things will ensure that the compliance, which happens post facto, happens actually real time and preferably before the things go wrong. So that is the kind of philosophy which we work. And the smallest broker is able to use the best technology vis-a-vis only the large brokers who can sort of employ that technology. So we are kind of trying to democratize the technology in some ways.
That's a fantastic response, yeah. Democratization of technology. I have many questions, but we've almost run out of time. I have one question maybe from the audience. Maybe I'll let Nitin talk about it. How do you see the fintech and capital markets in relationship to information security, data privacy, and business contact? Nitin, I had something else to ask, but let me take one question before we close because we're almost out of time.
Right. No, I mean, see, on data security, see, there are two types of data, right? One is customer data. Now, the customer data, in terms of KYC, etc., it gets uploaded. The way the structure is that we upload them to CKYC or KRA database. So we don't really store anything on us as such. When it comes to trade data, no one in the team has access to it. So all the data is stored in vaults where no one else from our team can access it. In our setup, in the way we've set up the business, we don't even have dealers now. When we started the business 10 years back, we used to offer a lot of call-in trades. So people who didn't have access to internet could call us up and place trades. Today, that business has dropped to nothing. 0.003% of our business today happens on dealer terminal. So that means we don't even have, our customers their data isn't even available to dealers, which otherwise would be available with generally traditional brokers as such. So yes, that way, I think data security-wise, I think it's covered.
Thank you, Nitin. I know we've completely run out of time. I had lots of questions. There were a few questions from coming from the all the people on the conference, but unfortunately we can't take it. This was really, really amazing. Thank you very much for all of you for giving this time. I'll hand you over back to the host.
Yes. Thank you, our esteemed panelists, for your valuable time and insights. I would also like to thank our partners, Amazon Web Services, IDFC First Bank, PhonePe, Zendesk, and PayPoint. We'll now take a short 10-minute break. In the meantime, attendees, if you could just visit the expo hall and check out the booths. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.